And we are on the phone with Medea Benjamin. Medea is the co-founder of Code Pink. She's an author and an activist. And we've been talking on this week's show about the situation between the U.S. and Venezuela and the situation at the Venezuelan embassy as of the time of recording, which is Thursday afternoon. And Medea is at the embassy now. So first of all, how are you, Medea?
I'm doing good, thanks. It's been a rough week, but we're hanging in here.
So for those who might not know or might not have heard other portions of our program yet, just to bring people up to date, there is a right-wing group of people associated with the attempted coup leaders in Venezuela trying to take over the embassy, the Venezuelan embassy here in Washington, D.C., and put in their own would-be ambassador, and you and other activists are working to stop that. Fair summary?
That's absolutely correct.
So there's been some violence. We've had, they've attacked a couple folks. Secret Service has been very aggressive. The Trump administration, of course, interested in helping the coup plotters and not the government of Venezuela. So what's going on right now? You're not inside the building, but some people are, and they're without power, as I understand it, and barricaded in, and with a fairly threatening group of certain people outside. So what's going on at the moment?
At the moment, there is a group inside, about 15 people. We are not allowed to take food or medicines into them, and last night the power did get cut off. The opposition folks have also set up an encampment around the entire perimeter of the building. We tried to put up one tent, they have 15, and our folks got arrested in the process. When we try to bring food, even up through a window, they come and descend on us, and then we get arrested. So it's a very tense atmosphere here, and 12 of our people have gotten arrested just in the last week. We also get attacked physically, verbally, a lot of racism, misogyny, anti-gay spewing from these people. And to know that they have the Secret Service, the D.C. police, all the security forces on their side when they're doing or trying to do an illegal act of taking over an embassy that belongs to a legitimate government. And we are the ones who are the peaceful protesters trying to uphold international law, and we're the ones who are not only left unprotected, on the contrary, we are attacked.
Well, Medea, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about, there's so many aspects of it that have been on my mind, including the lack of media coverage, but appropriate level of media coverage. But one of the things, first of all, I guess I have to ask you, are you surprised by the heavy-handedness of the D.C. and United States authorities weighing in on the sides of the people who want to take over an embassy that's not theirs? Are you surprised? You've been involved in a lot of actions, a lot of demonstrations, a lot of actions of all sorts, and it just seems extreme to me. But did it catch you off guard at all? Was it more than you were expecting?
Well, it's just extraordinary. I mean, I'm standing out here, and right in front of me, there's a big police van, a paddy wagon, another police van, another one, and that's just the D.C. police. So they're out here in full force, but they don't do anything to protect us. And then the Secret Service has its own huge force that's surrounding this building, but they don't do anything to protect us or the building or the international law, which according to the Vienna Conventions, everything that the opposition is doing here is illegal, from just putting up their signs on the building to drilling holes and banging on the doors. And it's just incredible, the whole thing. So I'm in shock. I've never seen anything like this in my whole life. I thought there was some kind of diplomatic privilege that if you can do this, if the U.S. allows this to happen in the case of one embassy, why shouldn't it happen to the U.S. somewhere else? Or why shouldn't it happen to the Bolivian embassy or the Guatemalan embassy or, any other kind of embassy? So it's outrageous and unprecedented.
Have you had a chance to exchange words at all with the Secret Service or with the D.C. police about this, to ask them how they justify it to themselves?
Absolutely. We talk to them every day, and we ask people to call the police, to call the mayor's office, to call our Congresswoman, Eleanor Holmes Norton's office, to ask how it is that they block the entire city sidewalk, how it is that they have incredible noise levels when they put sirens right in our ear day and night, and the city does nothing about that. And they just all sort of shrug their shoulders, and they act like, oh, this is not our job. It's somebody else. I'm just here obeying orders. Don't ask me. We tried to talk to the head of the Secret Service last night about why they were turning off the electricity, that this is illegal for D.C. law. The bills are paid, and it's illegal under international law. And they just say, oh, we're just obeying orders, and everybody's just obeying orders. And the orders, I would say, are coming from probably John Bolton and Elliott Abrams, because they're the ones who have been orchestrating this failed coup in Venezuela, so they want their own little coup here in Washington, D.C.
And Elliott Abrams, of course, infamously aided and abetted and trained and led U.S. support for death squads in Central and South America in previous decades. Honestly, I never thought, naively perhaps, but I never thought I'd see that person back. In my view, unambiguously evil individual back in a position of authority in the U.S. government. But clearly, I was wrong. I underestimated the ambition of the more extreme wings of our national security establishment. So. But I also feel, and we've talked about this on the program today, I also feel that this is, even though it's being neglected in the media, it's not getting the kind of coverage that it should be getting, that this is a very important and very well-conceived action, political action, to occupy this embassy on behalf of its rightful owners as a statement, and to therefore, as they used to say, kind of heighten the contradictions of the current system by actually experiencing in our own nation's capital the kind of lawless behavior that our government is attempting to carry on in Venezuela, elsewhere in the world. But what are your thoughts about that?
Well, yes, it's an absolute reflection of that lawless behavior. We spent 3 years in the U.S. talking about Russian interference in our elections, and here we have yet another example of the U.S. not just meddling into the affairs of other countries, but really trying to dictate who will be the leader of another country, and openly saying that the Monroe Doctrine is alive and well, and that's the doctrine that says that this is the U.S. backyard, and we get to decide who is who governs here, and also with Trump administration officials openly saying that we should get in there and U.S. oil companies should be able to produce and market their oil. And then there's the issue of Florida elections, and mostly Republicans, but also Democrats catering to about 200,000 Cuban Americans and Venezuelan Americans who, for this, is a big issue, and the Republicans want to make sure they win Florida in the upcoming presidential elections. So it's got that angle to it. And it's all under the pretense of, quote, helping the Venezuelan people. I'd like to know how they square that with the economic sanctions that, according to new reports, have killed over 40,000 people in Venezuela. So, yes, it's another just blatant example in our lifetime of U.S. trying to orchestrate a coup, yet another coup, and this time again in Latin America.
And again, we're talking with Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, who is at the Venezuelan embassy here in Washington, D.C. Medea, what do you say to people who argue that, well, Maduro is not a very good guy, he's a bad guy, and why should demonstrators or anybody else support him? And that's what you guys are doing. What's your response to that?
My response is that the path that the U.S. is going down will lead to a civil war, and the civil war could rage on for decades, could mean massive amounts of death and chaos and mayhem for not just Venezuela, but for the entire region. My answer is to ask people to look at the history of U.S. intervention. I was in Iraq under Saddam Hussein, where people told me horror stories about Saddam Hussein, and a year later, after the U.S. intervention, were ruining the day that they ever wanted the U.S. to come in. So, and I also say to people, if the U.S. was doing this because it's concerned about human rights, why is its greatest Arab ally in the world, Saudi Arabia, where they just beheaded 37 people, including juveniles, where they are engaged in the largest humanitarian catastrophe in the world in neighboring Yemen? And I can give lots and lots of other examples. So even if Maduro were as bad a person as they say, what the U.S. is planning for Venezuela would be far worse. And I think that many of the criticisms of Maduro are highly exaggerated.
Yeah, I think that's all fair, and we have also talked on this program a couple of times about the polling that shows that even people who disapprove of Maduro, Venezuelan people, that by vast, enormous majorities, 86%, they don't want U.S. involvement in their political affairs. So you're not representing the majority of the Venezuelan people, as so many supporters of U.S. military action claim, since the vast majority of Venezuelan people don't want the U.S. to become involved militarily. So you're certainly not helping the Venezuelan people. And I guess you know, it also occurs to me to say that because I know a lot of the coup folks that are harassing you guys right now say you're interfering in their country's affairs by being there and demonstrating. It also occurs to me to say that this is really, to me, what you guys are doing is the responsible thing to do about our own country as Americans.
Absolutely, that's right.
So, okay,
yeah,
where do you see...
This is about us as well as it's about them.
Absolutely. So where do you see this going, and how can people help? Assuming it's still going on, we're going to try to get these videos up early, but the radio program broadcasts on Saturday, and then the TV show on Monday. So what can people do to help when they hear
this? They can come here. That's the most important thing. You know, Georgetown at this time of year is absolutely beautiful, although it's not a neighborhood that most of us tend to frequent. But it is really an amazing atmosphere here. You got to come and see it for yourself. It's hard to believe. And we have a great group of activists who are coming down, different people every day, lots of different organizations, folks from Black Lives Matter and Latino groups and the interfaith community. And we have people coming in from Baltimore and Boston and all over. So it's a great place to be and to a great struggle to be part of, and trying to put a cog in the wheel of this empire, and doing it right here in Washington, D.C. is a historic opportunity. So come on down and join us. And if you can't come, please call Muriel Bowser's office and ask why they've been allowed to take over the streets and have the level of noise they have and blockade a building and not let food in, or call the Secret Service. Any of those would be helpful.
Okay, great. Well, you know, I am going to come down there. If I can, I will come as soon as we're done recording here. It might be dark, but assuming you guys are still there in the dark, and I know you are, then I will be there, and I encourage others to do the same. And Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink, Thanks for the great work that you and the other folks are doing out there, and thanks for talking to us.
Terrific. Thanks for having me on. Bye-bye, Richard.